Okay, so what is exception handling and what are the questions? Today's topic is exception handling. So we need to elaborate the content. So let's see. Exception handling is used to handle runtime errors so that regular flow of the program can be preserved. Not to regular flow of the program can be preserved. Okay. In order to, if there is specific errors which can be determined that it can occur in the while we are running the program, we are using exception handling. Okay, this is in short it is are occurred. What is exceptions and what is the difference between exception and errors? So are occurred during execution of the program. Okay, and this can be handled. This can be handled to preserve flow of the program and using try catch finally blocks. Exception occurs when there is some interruption during method execution error. Method execution if there is some interruptions. Okay, reasons what are the reasons of exception can like code errors, invalid user input error and many more. Means there can be code errors. If the compilation it is not able to compile, it is not getting the syntax which is required, so that invalid in user input. Okay, while errors represent irrecoverable condition like JVM running out of space, memory leak, stack overflow, repetitive recursive flow. Okay, represents irrecoverable condition like JVM running out of what S means irrecoverable means which cannot be recovered. Conditions like JVM running out of space, memory leaks, stack overflow, repetitive recursive flow. These errors must not be handled. Okay, so exceptions can be handled using try catch block while errors must not be handled the same way. Okay, so exception try catch block we can handle the exception while errors must not be handled in the same way. So if we go to the exception hierarchy, so how is the hierarchy working? We can check this in this pin diagram. I've drawn it already here. So at the top is the object. Okay. Again is the class. This is a superclass object. It is the subclass is throwable. Again, throwable has two subclasses: exception and errors. Exceptions are of two types: checked and unchecked, while errors are of virtual machine error and assertion error. JVM error and assertion when any specific error is such. Checked exceptions are like input output exception or compile time. The example come input output given or compile time exception while compiling while second is class not found exception. Checked exception means already checked means these are checked exceptions while we are giving an input or compile time which is compiling. The codes are compiling and run after interpreting it is get compiled, while class not found exception is already checked. So generally for checked exception we do not use try catch block, but it is taken into consideration in the while the programs are running. While unchecked blocks are like class cast exception, which for this we need to create some track catch blocking like class cast exception, array index out of bound exception, array index out of bound exception, index out of bound uh, and checked exception and unchecked exception. Okay, so these checked exceptions are called compile time, while unchecked are called runtime exception. Runtime exception while doing running the program, the exception which can occur, which we are thinking can occur. Okay, so if we move away from this part to the PowerPoint slide, yeah, we will go on with the second part of the exception handling is major questions occur is like what is the difference between throw and throws and throw versus throws. So throws are used to define the type of exception which are probable to occur. Okay, throws means which can occur, probably which are probable to occur. While throw used to declare the new object for that exception. While throw used to declare the new object for that exception. Okay, like throw new null pointer exception, null pointer exception. While try catch block, try catch and finally uh, are executed. Try blocks are required to where exception can be expected. Expected means there is an expected exception that this can occur. That note there are must be catch or finally either of them to handle the exception. And a try block will not work. Yeah, only try block separately will not work. Okay. See, with try block there must be either of the thing like catch or finally, or either of the things will work, or if both are there, that is the best case scenario. But uh, finally is a scenario where if there is exception, or if the track catch through some exception or not, the finally block will gets executed. So it must be used carefully, finally block. For user defined exceptions, okay, for user defined exceptions, the like invalid input exception class must there we need to create a separate class which extends exception, okay, the super class, and constructor to initialize the values if required, and for initializing the values constructor is required. So in some of if we go for the question part, some of the places sometimes in the argument there can be called as can be throwable used in place of exception. So that is also correct because this is a super class of child class. So child class can inherit all the activities of parent class. So that will also work. Like for example, it is like this way. Okay, so this is also correct. This is not wrong. Uh, yeah. So already discussed compile time exceptions are checked while runtime unchecked. These are the examples, okay. For example, let's see an example on Eclipse how it is working, okay. Yeah. And so there can be user defined exceptions, okay, customized exceptions that are user defined. So let's see how to create an user defined exception. So we can create a class, user defined class, okay. So like invalid input exception. In order to consume this class, we can create a separate class which extends exception, and we can put um, something like some message which can be displayed if you want to, okay. So and we can use super to extend that particular class, okay. Now what we will do, we can do here also, we can elaborate in two ways. Either we can if either we can just call, and this class will extend this input check, then it also will work. Mm. Let's see how it works, okay. So just a minute, I'll change it to input check. Yeah, and machine will work another constructor. Okay, so what we'll do, I'll just remove this from here, and we'll just use super super. Okay, let's see. Constructor input check is undefined. Okay, already in the input check we haven't defined any method as such. So we need to define a method in the input check. So that can be done. Let's pause the recordings for now. Okay. So for invalid input check exception, okay, this is the user defined. So we previously we were at some unimportant aspect. So what happened that what we are doing, we'll create a class, okay, which will extend exception, call exception class, and we will use a super token to access that exception values, okay. So we use constructor of parameterized double constructor. We can just keep some values if you want for, or you can keep single parameterized constructor also, okay. And what we'll do that in this particular exception, if you want to call this particular exception in another class, okay, in separate class, for example, if we want to call invalid input exception into exception structure, okay, then what I need to do, and then I need to create either the object or through the constructor values. Through the constructor we can consume this particular exception, okay. So I will create the parameterized constructor, okay, while and mm, okay, and yeah, and if we want to extend something like extend input check, this is not required. If I comment this out, then is no need to extend any input checks as such. If I comment this out and if I leave it, so it will there super constructor input check is indifferent for default constructor and must define explain. Yeah, so this is occurring because it is called from this another class explain structure, but yeah, and this constructor is called, sorry, and if I just remove this, I revoke this one out, okay, there would be no error related to there would be no error related to input check as such, okay. Yeah, because input check was having some constructor, and so in order to access that you need to use that particular. If you do not extend that, and then also it will work. For only for customized exception, this is the process. We'll create a throw, we'll tell that this exception will declare that this exception will occur, and this message, and we will catch that particular exception, okay. And if I need to call invalid input exception in this exception structure and consume this, so since I have declared here some input exception, so I need to extend, so I need to create the constructor for this like the values, okay. So if once I do this, and since I have called it use here as super, so then I need to it is calling for input check, but if I comment this out, this will work, okay. So this is the flow, and this is correct, this is fine, no exception, type must be subclass of throwable, okay. This input x, okay, this is invalid because since there is no way to use this particular exception, since I'm using this exception invalid input exception class here in this line number 21, and there is no separate way to consume this exception, so it is occurring that no exception of type invalid can be thrown. An exception type must be a subclass of throwable, so there must be a subclass of throwable. So I will do one thing, I will just since either I will do two things, and to resolve that error I will extend input check, or I will extend exception, either of this, so both will work, okay. See, I will show you one by one. First I will show the first approach, extend input check, okay. So this is working, okay. And if I extend input check, then I need to use here super, because super has some constructor and one method, and you have to consume these values, you need to use super keyword. Otherwise if I do just exception, then you need to for this will work. So see, if I extended exceptions, and then this will work, because exception class there is a unextended, this exception will be called here, okay. This is approach, okay. It's unparameterized exception, then you will call it here and you will display the output. This is such no need to extend here, this is not required to be extended as such, and just consume it here. Just remove this all. Yeah. Using that particular exception directly here. Yeah. Here. Structure is here actually this program. No. Exception structure is not only for checking the exceptions, and the small work is also going on. The one another functionality is solve odd numbers, like odd numbers. This is the major functionality. What I did that I have taken the user input of two values, okay, and stored it in an array of these, okay. And what I have done that I will do two things. I will input the values here in the blocking, and again do two things: remainder and check multiplication, like ck for multiplication, and multiply, while this one is for remainders. Okay, remainder. These two things we are doing, and we are checking that if x is greater than 3 and divisible by 3, then yeah, and else. And system just I will if x is not equal to y or less than, print the return this value of remainder. This is the integer value.